That was a great defensive battle until it wasn't and Oklahoma City pulled away. Stop me if you've heard that before, Tyler. It was a great game back and forth between the Thunder and whoever they're playing until Oklahoma City goes on a big run and pulls away. I feel like we've seen that story several times in the playoffs already.
Yeah, it's played it out itself out a few times, and boy, it is fun to watch when they sit there and turn it on.
Yeah, when you're a Thunder fan like you are, I'm sure you're having a great one tonight. Thunder winning 114-88, and I mean, you could just kind of look at a few takeaways already, even just in the stat sheet here. When the one team shoots 50% from the field and the other shoots 35, the odds are going to be in your favor. When you're also shooting 52% from deep, Minnesota's only shooting 29%. In the modern NBA, that's the telltale sign. You really don't need to look at anything else. One team's shooting way better than the other. That's a pretty easy giveaway there. You can look at the game flow, win probability, whatever stat. It's going to tell you about the middle of the third quarters when OKC really started rocking away with this, came back to win the rebounding battle, had fewer turnovers, all those great things there. But this was a game where Minnesota definitely came to play. And I think everyone expected Minnesota to come to play. This is a Wolves team that has been not flying under the radar anymore. You don't get to the Western Conference Finals by flying under the radar. But Julius Randle, what a first half he had, just knocking everything down, and then has one shot the entire third quarter. Oklahoma City, that was the big adjustment I really saw for them. They'd started to move Caruso onto him. Minnesota was able to shake him off with some screens, kind of get anyone but Caruso on Randle. But once Oklahoma City got dead set on that matchup, Julius Randle didn't become a non-factor. He showed back up in the fourth quarter, but nowhere near the impact he did. Rudy Gobert, you had 3 rebounds and 2 points. Good job. We talked about that a little bit, that would be a problem. Minnesota's front court, if it could really get going or not. And Randall showed up, Gobert did not. But other than that, I mean, just kind of a below average game for Ant. Only 18 points, 5 for 13, had 9 boards, but not a whole lot of assists there. And then you just look at the 3-point shooting off the bench. Naz Reid 0 for 7, extremely uncharacteristic night for him. Nickeil Alexander-Walker 2 for 9. DiVincenzo 3 for 12. Just not a good shooting night. Mike Conley even 1 for 5. I mean, this was the Thunder were able to play their game. They were able to stretch Minnesota out, guard them well defensively wherever they wanted to get to them. They were able to win a matchup. And you look at OKC. I mean, everybody showed up. It's crazy to think Hardenstein, Isaiah Hardenstein had 10 points, and at one point in time, he was the leading scorer in that game for Oklahoma City when we had that rock fight of a first half going on. And then SGA, horrible first half, 2 for 13, had 7 free throw attempts in the first 5 minutes of the game. A lot of people were very upset about that. I can understand why. But SGA eventually got going, finished with 31. He goes off again, and Oklahoma City's bench just showed up. I mean, that is what they have done all season. Kenrich Williams shows up and plays 10 minutes. He has a plus minus of plus 19. I mean, it's just ridiculous what Oklahoma City can throw at people. Tyler, we said there was a chance that this could happen, that Oklahoma City could really flex that depth again, and we saw it here in game one.
Yeah, and when I was kind of thinking about the lead up to this game, we had talked a little bit about the last video, obviously, and then just off air, so to speak. I wasn't as worried about the short turnaround. People were making a big deal of that, saying, "Hey, that line's way too big for the Thunder to cover," because the line would start at 7.5 for this game one in favor of OKC, and everybody's saying, "How is that possible? Minnesota got this rest. Oklahoma City's on short notice." But here's the deal with that: is that Oklahoma City finished the series at home. They got to sleep in their own beds. They didn't have to travel for game one. Had it been flipped and Oklahoma City had to travel for game one, yeah, I would have been a little bit worried. But you're already at home, so that helps a lot with that. Plus, the Denver series, although it was physical at times, it was not necessarily a rock fight like you might get into with Minnesota. So that kind of helped things. And then on top of that, like neither team I thought played very well the first half, other than Julius Randle. He was balling out like you mentioned, and had it not been for him, OKC, despite how kind of poor they shot, could have went into halftime with a near double-digit lead. Instead, trailing by 4. And I think the second half was more indicative of how the teams were playing. And Alex Caruso, you talked about that. My goodness. I mean, who would have thought that the perfect answer to Nikola Jokic to Julius Randle, these big burly power forwards slash centers, is just a 6'3" bald white guy
Yeah.
that just gets after you, and it's really fun to watch because it's picking at the fact that Jokic and Randall do a lot of their damage away from the net. Sure, they could get into the post at times and go to work there, but they are not guys that are going to sit there and camp down low, right? So that allows for a guy like Caruso, who's so gifted defensively, to guard those guys on the perimeter and offer an answer that would seem unconventional, but with the way those two play, it allows for that. And it's just a really fun adjustment by Coach Dagnall to say, "All right, Caruso, go get them. Go harass those guys."
Yeah, I mean it was a great adjustment, and I'm intrigued to see how this plays out. This whole matchup we're about to get into, I think it's going to be really fun to see how Minnesota reacts to what Oklahoma City can throw at him. Because I mean, if you're a Minnesota fan, and I saw a lot of Minnesota fans on social media tonight, and I think they all had a pretty good point that you look at that first half, it was a sloppy first half. You mentioned it already, touched on it, but if you're Minnesota, you come out amazing from deep. I mean, you're coming out, you have the big punch in the mouth almost to start the game, get the 8-0 run. And this is a Minnesota team that they've thrived on the road. I mean, they have thrived in this kind of environment. Oklahoma City, it took them a while. It took them a long while to get going. But Minnesota just slowed down a little bit. And I mean, that is a good thing for Minnesota. Oklahoma City's half court offense struggled in that first half. And I think that was one of the big things that I think really did help the Thunder when they got to the third quarter. Where does Oklahoma City thrive at? Well, one of the things they thrive at. Once they get those turnovers and really creating that transition offense, once they can start to go up and down with you, that boat race can really turn on. I mean, it can go from a tight game to blowout territory really quick. And Minnesota did an amazing job of that in the first half, but Oklahoma City got a little bit of transition. Minnesota started settling for longer and longer and longer threes. I mean, we were talking, it felt like they were just, eventually felt like they were going to start just chucking up half court shots. That's how bad it got for Minnesota at one point, where they just could not get anything in the paint. And that was when the game really turned, because Oklahoma City's able to get those rebounds and just get out. Here's two guys already running down the floor. Let's go. So we don't need to set anything up. Let's just go. And once Oklahoma City's able to do that, it is not, you are in the danger zone immediately. It doesn't matter if the game's tied. It doesn't matter if you're down 10 or up 10. That's when you enter the danger territory playing Oklahoma City. And that's what happened again here. I mean, it's going to be an uphill battle for Minnesota. And I think everyone believed it was going to be an uphill battle. I think people wanted to see how Minnesota would go up against it. But when Oklahoma City plays like they did in the second half, they look like the best team in the NBA. They look like a team that won 68 games. It's ridiculous to try to have to battle with that. I want to see how Minnesota counters. But if we had to overreact to a game one, this does not bode well for Minnesota. You could say, yeah, it was a horrible shooting night, and it was, but that's what Oklahoma City's defense could do to people. Oklahoma City shot, 52% for three, and that's probably not going to happen again this series. That's an uncharacteristic shooting night to shoot over 50% for anybody. But at the same time, if I have to take one thing away from game one, Minnesota's defense is going to be great, but sometimes the Thunder just have these nights where you can't stop them. And if they continue to have just even shooting, 40% from three, it's going to be a rough series for Minnesota.
I don't know if I'll go so far as say rough, but I think the big takeaway for me is, and we had kind of alluded to it in terms of the X's and O's coming into it, but this illustrates why I was, of all the teams going into the playoffs, where I thought, okay, if the Thunder get this team in the finals, like we worried, it was the Cavaliers. Why is that? Because the Cavs have two really solid big men in Jared Allen and Evan Mobley. Well, now they're out of the picture, right? You're not meeting them in the finals. And I don't see another team, and I didn't see another team coming into the playoffs where you can make the case that, hey, you had two solid bigs you have to contend with. And why is that important in the modern NBA, you think? Well, because as we're seeing with the Minnesota game, and granted, it's just one, we'll see how the rest of the series plays out. But when you allow Chet and Hardenstein to be able to take turns, essentially taking care of Rudy Gobert and kind of keeping him busy underneath the net, and then, like we mentioned, allow a guy like Alex Caruso to kind of bump out on a stretch four that is Julius Randle. Back to the Denver series, Nikola Jokic likes play outside at times. that all of a sudden makes that half court offense for your team, whether it's Minnesota, Denver, whoever, tough because there's no easy looks inside all of a sudden because you've got two bigs and Chad and Hardenstein that could clog up that paint, and you still got all the defenders because those two can rotate and step out if they need to. So it makes it just kind of a web. Like Oklahoma City, switched a little bit of zone tonight, did a little bit of that. So they're going to throw different things at you, and all five guys on the floor at all times, it doesn't matter who's out there, can guard. So it just creates a nightmare for a lot of teams, unless you have some size to counter, the Chet Hartenstein type minutes. It's really tough sledding.
It is. And I mean, it did not help for Minnesota that, Rudy Gobert picks up 2 fouls, not even 90 seconds into the game. I mean,
Yeah,
that's a horrific
yeah,
start. That was the first kind of bell that goes off in your head that, this might get ugly late in the game when you need Rudy Gobert. If you're getting 2 fouls 90 seconds in, that's not a good sign for anybody. And then just the way this game continued to play out, just Minnesota, I don't want to say foul heavy, but that first few minutes where SGA was just able to do whatever he wanted to get to the line. Saw a lot of people mad online about that. I get that. But at the end of the day,
one of my friends I know in Kansas literally texted me and said, "Wait, you guys watch 82 games of this for any other player telling them to get to the weight room?" So he's giving me all sorts of
yeah,
crap about that. But
but
look, man,
but
like
Minnesota
there is a
adjusted was the
skill.
thing.
Yeah. And there is a skill to drawing the contact, right? And
Yeah.
and I think there's a point late in the game where Doris Burke was mentioned because SGA had that big kind of N one dagger type where he's falling, kind of floats it up, it rails around and in. And Reggie Miller is basically like, hey, yeah, he's good at putting up the shot, but he's also good at just he didn't say flop, but you could tell he wanted to say flop. It's not so much a flop, but it's taking the contacts and being able to fall gracefully.
Yeah.
Okay, let's put it that way. Because a flop implies over exaggerated. There is a skill, and a lot of guys in previous generations did it. It's just highlighted more nowadays because of, we got these 4K, 8K cameras so you can see
Yeah.
every little detail, right? But SGA is one of those guys. Harden did it for a long time where you master taking that contact enough to look like you were affected
Yeah.
and you get that foul. Now, was a little. I was even in that first few minutes where the Thunder are struggling. SGA is getting these fouls. I'm going, oh boy, here we go.
I mean, it
Can't
was.
wait.
I mean, again, we could do an entire separate video where I just pull up social media comments and I just read them off to you and be like, "Now, Tyler, how do you feel about
Yeah,
this?"
I mean, look, I
It
get
was
it.
a
I
time.
get it. As an opposing fan, that's very frustrating to watch. I get it, but it is the game. He's not flopping. He's just being able
That
to take
depends
it
on who
in
you
with enough
talk to,
control.
Tyler.
He's taking it in with enough control. Luca does the same. Luca's a free throw merchant. Like that's the thing. All these elite scorers, to a degree, are free throw merchants. If we're being honest,
If we're being
it's just
honest,
some
but we
guys
we
get
we don't want to have that conversation. No one wants to have that
yeah.
conversation.
Like Harden got dogged on it furious. KD went through a stretch where everything he did going to the net, he was throwing up his hands. LeBron did it plenty of times. Like
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's pretty basketball. I'm not gonna make that argument, but it is part of the game. That's just
Yeah.
how it's officiated. So if you want those complaints, I'm sorry. One final point I want to touch on, okay, before we get out on it, is Anthony Edwards had that kind of that little ankle twist it looked like, and it wasn't anything egregious, just one of those plays where he's going up over Caruso. Caruso's trying to draw the charge, didn't get it, and Ant just came down weird on his foot. Not on Caruso's foot, but his own foot. Curious to see if that affects him at all on game 2 and 3.
Yeah.
He looked fine, honestly, after going to the locker room and coming back. He's a young kid. He's tough too. Like Anthony Edwards, very tough guy. So just curious though, see how that plays out because you never know those little tweaks and tinges when we get this late in the postseason run. You don't think much of it, but then all of a sudden the guy does it again, right?
Yeah.
A game later, or 2 game later, and all of a sudden it's re-aggravated. So curious to see how that plays out.
Yeah, and that was a point that Richard Jefferson had made, whereas that may not bother you tonight. It's going to bother you a lot
Yeah,
more tomorrow, and it's going to bother you a little bit more in game
yeah.
two. But Ant's one of those guys I think he'll bounce back pretty as easily as
He's
you can
young,
from
like I said,
something
he's
like
tough.
that. Yeah,
Yeah,
he's a
he's
tough
he's
guy.
he's one of those guys that you know. Some of these guys you question, all right, how much do you really want it? Because they take a little shoulder stinger or something, and they're kind of playing it up. But Ant's definitely one of those guys I gotta say that you almost got cut off his arms or his legs to get him to stop playing. You
Yeah.
know, you got to take him away, kicking and screaming, just about.
Yeah, but final takeaway, I mean, if you're Minnesota, Naz Reid's not going 0 for 7 from 3 again. Some of these guys that just had horrific games. Oklahoma City's defense could do that, but also just uncharacteristic shooting nights for the Thunder. They were able to really start playing their game in the third quarter. And once they're able to play their game, there's not a lot you can really do to stop it. That's just how they are. That's how you win 68 games in a regular season and get to the conference finals. But hopefully, we'll have a closer game in game two. Hopefully, it'll be a good defensive battle again. I mean, I know some people want it to be everything's a foul. Some people want it to be no thing's a foul. You know, we'll have to see how that kind of reacts. We might have to do a social media video, Tyler. If things get bad enough, we might have to do let's just react to social media comments because I saw some wild things said even tonight, and it's only going to get worse from here. But folks, as always, if you made it this far in the video, if you like the video, well, there is a like button. To just click right on down there. You wouldn't think it helps the channel a lot, but it really does, as does leaving a comment down below. How do you feel about Game 1 OKC getting the win over Minnesota? And then, as always, feel free to subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell as well to always be notified when new videos come out. If you're listening to this on Spotify, give us a 5-star review over there. But folks, as always, until next time, have a good one, everybody.